Welcome to the channel. This is Reliable Ready. Before we go into any analysis, any stock market related stuff, you guys know I'm not a licensed financial advisor. Everything in this video contains only my opinion and is for entertainment purposes only, trying to give you guys some entertainment, sharing my opinion, and trying to make some money in the process, of course. Hope everyone's having a good start to this morning. New position that we added on the title. We're playing around with this GameStop, so I'm sure that it'll attract some attention from some of you guys. But playing around this 23 break, I was able to hold as it was holding this green candle. We tried getting 2302, and I think the fill came in at 2304. Just getting that entry. So even if this pulls back in, maybe my downside risk is it has to come back down to the gap, but I do think it has a nice uptrend. Maybe that's trying to build, where if you just match these up, maybe it's something like this. But I like the 23 hold. If it can do that, I think we can get a leg up. Buyers got to come in and hold it at that area though. But just marking that 23 flat right there, you can see over top of those wicks. Are the buyers going to be able to hold it above that? Uh, it was a good morning so far for me. We had some good profit takes on a firm where I believe my first one was right at the open. Just wanted to make sure this wasn't just going to get rejected and shoot right back down. I regretted not having a trim off this 1850 the other day, but now we had also a fill in the 19. So the 19 fill was the best fill I've had on that name since we took the 14 break. XELA, we took a fill in those 30s, just continuing to ring the register. XELA continues to be strong and actually flirting with the top end of the channel. Lucid, we have no fills on Lucid. I did see it wick up towards those 750s, and I was thinking pretty bullish on it. So I'd like to see some buyers come back in, but still, we were playing around with the 7 level, so we're decently in the money, and we think that we can get some continuation to the upside still. I do want to keep an eye on this GME because I'm not really interested in holding it through this sort of trend line that we have. But I'm also interested in maybe adding a little bit more. And then, of course, the roadblocks. We continued playing around with this yesterday. We actually had a fill after the Fed where we added to it as it was continuing to hold above this uptrend that we have marked. It dates back even further than that. But now getting the gap up over top of this sort of flat top area, we talked about maybe respecting those 40-50s. Well, when it was above that, I was a little bit more bullish and didn't take the fill. But let's see if this can hold these 40-25s and maybe just start building this U shape. I know it's coming back in, but we think that we can get a lot more movement than just a percent up to that. But you can see maybe that is the top for the day, and we don't have a chance to trim it up there again until maybe later, maybe tomorrow or maybe next week. I'm not really sure. And I should have Tilray up there. We do have a small position in Tilray. We took a fill off of these lower 90s, trimmed it up to 2s, reloaded, trimmed it up to 2. We tried to reload it right here. We never got it. And then we just took a smaller fill out 96 at the end of the market. When it opened up, we took a fill above 2. And then my best fill was a 09, just respecting these highs right here. And we are also on the bid off this gap. So if this one does retrace back in, we're going to reload this and play this support level and see if we can get some more movement to the upside. So yes, that is the morning. I should keep an eye on GME. Still holding 23s, so not bad. 10 minutes left in this candle. We think that it's possible for this candle to turn green. I'd like to just see it hold above 23s. If it can't do that, then it is what it is. And we will adjust according to what it wants to do on this candle right here. But if it can hold 23s, I feel pretty good about the position, maybe for some upside move. And I'll go to the daily chart, and you can see Just trying to hold this support down here, a nice hold of 22s. If this can start catching a bid to the upside, we think it's possible that it's maybe setting up some sort of flat top around this level. You can see dating all the ways back to September of 22. It keeps rejecting this area, so if we can get this price movement back over towards those 27s, we like the catalyst for the name, and you can see the longer term uptrend, not just the uptrend out over the last couple days. You can see a nice uptrend right here. So if we can hold this uptrend, we think that we can get some price movement to the upside. So that's everything that we see right there with GME. Looking back at Lucid, you know, I probably could have been a little bit better prepared. You see it gaps up, it fills the gap, and then it makes the run up for those 750s. I could have had a couple trims. That's where I would have liked to start getting some off, but it is what it is. It's all right. We think that this is a nice strong chart setup, even if it has to pull back into that 7. We like this sort of swing catalyst for Lucid. A lot of these EV names have been running pretty strong, and we do still have a piece of the Nikola. We haven't had any trims in that for a while since it was up at the 75s, 275s, but we took a 150 break, so we feel pretty comfortable holding that. You know, even the other day when it was down, what, 10% or something like that, I didn't even really look at it when it was down. We just said, hey, if it can hold 2, then it still looks good. But let's get a refresh of the watch list. We can see 29 million on TUP. You know, this was a red candle coming back in. I was thinking about it. Maybe if it would came down to 208, I was really thinking about it there, but no, I don't think I'm gonna play around with that. The MNK up 45% on some continuation. Probably not gonna play that. We thought about playing it off of this 80, and we also were sitting there at these when it was at 59. We were thinking about adding to it, or playing it down here. We just never did. And man, I regret not, because that would have made my day yesterday for sure. Well, let's go back to the GME. Red candle coming on back in. We think that we have some good support level. You can see some of the wicks up in here. 6 minutes left on the candle. Can we start showing a wick into this candle? I don't really want to see it start giving up these lows. Starting a new position is always a little bit more difficult, and where I was starting it is above this flat top. So this candle being able to set a close even above this high from Tuesday, I think is a good start, even if it needs to pull back in. I think it can start building some sort of U that can start setting higher highs and higher lows. So that's what we're playing here. If it's not the case, we're probably going to give it this trend line. So maybe giving it 50 cents of risk, which is a little bit more than maybe I'd like to. But we think the catalyst is there for maybe some higher highs. Let's start with just holding 23s, and we'll go from there. Let's see what else we can find. Pretty early in the day, Lucid's still right around those 25s. I know this ASTS, I was looking at it yesterday, and here was the reason being. You can see it reject, 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 and then put this green candle through that. It's just kind of light volume and still just not quite there on the daily chart. You can see since that issuance, you see the gap down through that trend line, right back into this support level around this 4, I think is reasonable. But just the strength just isn't there, so that's what kept me away from it. Is, you know, this is a weak name. Let's see if we can get it even lower. But now that it's sitting up testing that 4, you can see that flat top. We have a test of it on the very first candle of the day and getting bought up. So you see people are buying up the name, and now actually testing these lows and these highs over here. So that could be one for some continuation on the day. A name that's been weaker over the last few weeks. We can see AFRM coming back in underneath the 19. So let's go take a look at where we got that fill on AFRM. Let's look back at GME, still holding 23, so that's what we like to see right there. AFRM, we had our best print was a 1917. We also have a 1860 or 1886. And the first fill, a 1827, not the greatest fill, but like I said, when it gapped up and I didn't have a fill off of those 1850s from the day before, I just didn't want to hold it back into the gap and then have to deal with waiting an extra day for it to make a move higher. And I would say Zim. Zim is another name that we are gonna go take some profits off right now, actually. Playing with the 13 level, putting a full green engulfing candle above the highs. Let's look at the daily chart on Zim actually. Looks good for continuation. So maybe we put an alert or just stop some shares if it wants to get back underneath the 70s. Let's see what that looks like on a 15-minute chart actually. Yeah, I think we just hold this. It looks really strong, and I think it's reasonable to hold for some higher movement with this chart setup that it has a nice uptrend. It has the gap up here at 1750, so let's see if we can get closer to that 1750 before we take more. BDRX, right around this 7, you can see the catalyst for this build, and I would say 770 is reasonable for an extension. It's wicked up to it multiple times, but holding this uptrend. But the highs have not gotten higher yet for now. But when it does, we think that this is a catalyst name to maybe shoot up for this 1075 gap and maybe even 1550. So one that we'd like to keep an eye on, and one that we've played. We played this over here, had some good outs. Actually, we played it over here, had some good outs, got stopped out. Never played it here, makes another move, and now we've just been trading sideways. GME still right around this 23s. Not any real price movement to the downside yet. 2 minutes left in this candle. If this were to start coming on in close to these 2290s, I think it's reasonable for me to add more to my position. My position's slightly in the red for now. Like I said, we're playing above those 23s. So starting a new position is always can always be a little bit tricky. And I should say we were thinking about taking a piece off right at the open for Workiva. It gaps up to a new high. You can see it gaps up to the new high right here. Uh, the channel, it would lead you to think, hey, we're gonna print 116 gap here. It's been respecting this channel very well since July of 22. It's been a really strong mover, and it's just like how much more room can this go? If we can print up to 116, I think that's going to be the exit of our swing position. Of course, I don't have the most amount of size on it, but all in all, pretty decent setup here for some continuation. It's just, are we going to get it? It's just because of how strong this name's been since July. A lot of names, they've been strong since like maybe September, maybe start of the year, maybe even like March or May. Yeah, I know. But this one being strong since July, it's like when does the true profit taking start coming in? So I think if Workiva were to catch a bid up to those around that 110 area, I think that's where we're really going to start respecting it. But other than that, that is what we're playing. All these names that we have on the title, we are in, and the newest one is GME, and that's the only one that's actually not in the money. But holding 23s right now, so that is a good start, and this is the close of this candle. Let's see what this next candle wants to do. Maybe if it pulls into these lower 90s, that is where a good add is worth it. Till right, not a half bad look, holding that 2 range. Actually, a pretty strong setup. It gaps up right to that neckline, tries to retrace down. Buyers buy it up real quick. Yeah, it wasn't underneath that too for very long. So I would say is a pretty strong setup. And a firm, kind of the same story. Gaps up sort of towards this flat top, puts a green candle in, trades back in. Buyers are trying to hold it above this 1860. DocuSign, a nice strong candle off the open. A large wick is selling there up towards this sort of breakout area that I have marked. And why I have it marked is just it rejected it a couple days the last week and the week before that. But we think that if it gets over top of 55 half, that this is going to be a strong name where the true sort of flat top is these rejections up here in these upper 60s. So I'm actually really excited about this name and the position that we have built on it. So DocuSign, if it works out the way that I want it to, is probably going to be one of those names that you're going to see on the title every day, or at least every live stream. I think PBR was supposed to report today. They must have pushed it back to August 3rd. I was excited to look at that report, but it is what it is. Snap on a negative break. I don't know if I'm going to be playing this yet. I think I can get it lower, and the closer I can get it to this area right here, I would say the better, but it does have some good support that it held at 10. And if you look at every single earnings report uh, for Snap, it's gapped down and giving you some strength to the upside. GME, we're going to go take a look back over at this one. Right underneath these 23s, is this going to have some buyers coming in these 90s under 23? I don't know how many people really trapped it. You do have the volume increase here when it takes 23s, but are we going to be able to hold? You know, right now we're trying to hold the body of the candle. And really not much size on the bid and really not much volume on the name today. So given the idea or the feel like that it's going to take a little bit more time before we get a true breakout of that 23 level. But, you know, maybe I'm wrong. MRSN, a huge gap down, probably some sort of share issuance. GWM still holding this trend line right here. Not any volume coming into the stock yet, but you know, if this is a trend line that is solidified and holds, you know, top end of the channel is up at 55. That would be an insane move. Talking about it down here near 16. Maybe something is there. Let's take a look back at Lucid. You know, I think that's going to be my one regret of the day. And Array also has a solidified downtrend. Tried trading above it one day, but you can see the catalyst for the uptrend as well. A little short double bottom right there. Still rejecting the downtrend, of course, but not a terrible setup there. Zim giving up a rejection of these 15s. GME down to these 2290s. I think this is where we're going to try and add some more. That's what we talked about before. So let's go ahead and do so and give this position a chance. Underneath those 90s, I feel is a decent add. And you know, if it wants to come back into the gap, maybe we try it one more time off of 70s. Lucid still holding 25s. Held a lot better than the GME did, but really wicked into these previous tops a lot better. So we're going to see if we can get some price movement up for the upside. We're probably going to go on the ask at 750 and start trimming from there. GME right into these 85s. So maybe I just don't have the right idea with this one, but hopefully we got 9 minutes left in this candle. Hopefully this can start leaving a wick. But getting below that green engulfing, or the body of that candle, which is the gap up price actually, uh, given the feel like, hey, we need to retrace down to this 2270 before we can make anything notable. And right through those levels. Yeah, so maybe I just have the wrong idea with GME for right now. You know, it had a good look off the morning, I thought. But looking at the catalyst, hmm, hmm, interesting. 23 felt like it was going to be a lot better than what it presented right there. Let's look at the top volume for today. Seems like it's been a little bit of a profit take day. GME starting to show a little bit of a wick into that level, so maybe that is the uh, start of something. Maybe that can give some confidence to some of the buyers. Tilray wicked into this red candle. So is anybody trying to say, hey, strong name on the gap up? We think that we can at least get it back down to the gap up from yesterday. We'll see. We'll see. Let's go back to the top movers, see if we can find anything. TNet reported, I seen that they beat on EPS at least significantly, like 40 something cents, I believe it was. AI gap up, wicks down to these highs at 4190s. We can see the catalyst for, maybe there's some sort of resistance level, some sort of channel built in with AI. If this wants to be the wick low for GME, I'd be all for it. Should probably go take a look back at XELA. XELA red engulfing through the level, so we did have a nice print on the name. If it wants to come back in, we think the reload area is going to be around this 550 to 525 range, as I'm sure it has some sort of channel built in right there, where it wicked, kind of a false wick through that top end of the channel. It's done that a couple times, and each time it's kind of retraced back in. So does it need to retrace back in, where I'm going to be a buyer in the middle of these fives. End phase, they report after hours today. So playing this like an earnings play, I'm not interested in selling any of the shares I got, but I would say it probably has some sort of uptrend build right in there. So in these upper 60s, it continues to get bought up. Not the greatest trend line, I would say, because the true picture for end phase, as I mentioned almost every live stream, is this longer term uptrend from October of 2020, and how the top end of the channel is a fairly parallel channel, give or take something like that. GME still holding these 2285s. 5 minutes left on this candle. Looks like it's going to want to try and give up the level right here. The other option that we have is we don't even give it a chance to come back into this gap. Let's query the chart on everything here. Let's get a fresh look. Yeah, I think we're gonna give it this trend line, and if it goes against us from there, then it goes against us from there. But we are gonna try this gap right here off 2270 and see if GME can stay green on the day always. And if we get a red break, my out is probably gonna be 2260. I could give it the low of 2244, but that's giving it a little bit more risk than I intended to have. Affirm looks like everything's kind of given a little bit of resistance. Got a few names that are still holding well. Take a look at Disney gapping up, putting a red candle, testing towards this sort of 20 or 86.25. Looking at the daily chart, the real question is this support going to be able to hold, give or take, somewhere in these middle 80s? We have a good feel that there is a support level that we are trying to play a bounce off of. GME now leaving a little bit better of a wick. At least show that there's some buyers that are trying to buy this. So wick higher than the first candle as well, so I do like that part of it. I'd prefer not seeing these buyers to be out of the money, but if it needs to wick into 2270, be big, 4 million in volume, coming all the ways back in, nice red candle in through that level. If this was a downtrend right there, kind of gapping through that downtrend, is that going to be a catalyst for any type of move higher? Giving you the bull flag, on this breakout day. Nice close on the day. Indecision. Second candle. Here's your third candle giving you a gap up through the downtrend. Doesn't need to pull back in, but volume already at 4 million, exceeding majority of these days on the move to the upside. So not a half bad look. In mode. This one's gonna kill me. Talked about this on the day. You can go back to the live stream of July 7th. We were talking about saying, hey, this is a flat top here at 37. And then we seen it the next day on Monday and we said, hey, we filled the gap. What's it going to do after it fills the gap? Close on a nice green candle and just hasn't looked back. So some of those high margin companies have really done a good job. We can keep an eye on Tilray, and let's just go on the ask at 213 for Tilray and see if we can start ringing the register. We can even take a piece off market right here if we wanted to. Let's go ahead and do so. Take a piece off market and go on the ask at 214. On the ask at 214 now, we'll see if we can get that fill. We got the open of the next candle. Let's go back to GME. Showing a little bit of wick of buying. Are we going to be able to turn green? I don't like how the red candle closes below the body of the first green candle. But I've seen worse setups, and it's not like it's super volatile where, even if I bought the very top down 1.25% off of it, because we were playing the the top end of this 23 break, and we have one fill in towards these 86. Just waiting for this next candle to open. Not a lot of volume coming into this yet either. Let's take a look back at Roblox. Roblox came all the ways in, gave up 40s. Not what we wanted to see, but still holding above the uptrend. And we were realistic that Roblox is a little bit weaker. You can see the strength is negative. We're just playing the trend line, so my out is definitely going to be underneath the wick lows from the, what would that be, Wednesday and Monday. So if that one doesn't work out for us, and it doesn't work out for us, there's nothing that we can do to change that. GME up to these 2290s. That's a good start to this candle, but I would say that up to 2295, it's still gonna have to fight back above that wick and the body, the start of the body of that green candle. Uh, but if it can just get this nice slow churn and reclaim 23s, we think it's a reasonable setup. Lucid still holding 725, so playing with that 7 level, we really want to start making our moves of trimming the position down up in those 50s. As it continues to hold 25s though, that is the level that it was reject, 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 pull back in, trend line hold, trend line hold, trend line hold, trend line hold yesterday. Held the 7s beautifully. I actually put a nice double bottom off it, took out the highs, bull flag, and then the continuation play up to those 50s. Are we going to see more continuation on the name is what I'm going to be trying to find out today. But we are going to start up at those 50s. If we get back up to those 50s, we're going to respect it. Wick into the middle of this red candle, showing some more continuation, like we want to push down lower. Given the look like we want to go down lower at least. Let's see if some buyers can come in and continue to try and hold this level. We're hoping that maybe this can be a wick low, potentially. But downside risk, I'd say you're 2270 and maybe even 2266. A couple of areas that could catch a bid. And now that I'm thinking about it, I think we're gonna go put an alert on Roblox. It is trying to catch a bid off of this shorter time uptrend, but longer term. Oh, we do have an alert in underneath those 3950s. Is probably gonna be the out for that name. That was another trim name that we had today was KRE off the opening candle. I didn't even realize that we had a pretty good fill on that name, respected those 30s, and I think the fill actually came in at 49.28 half. So KRE rang the register, playing off of that 42 break. It's been a while since we really even played the name, but here's your 42 break. We played it over that neckline, trimmed it to the upside, waited for a further breakout. We didn't have any trims on it yesterday. We said, hey, we think we can get that 49.30 and potentially the gap up at 50.70. So rang the register there as well. GME giving up this 85 level on red engulfing to the downside. So let's see what this is like at 2270s. And that's going to be the last attempt that we have at playing this position long. But not the greatest look. 3 red candles to the downside off of that first green candle. So this is maybe one of those examples where showing a little bit of patience off this open can pay off a little bit better. If we'd started this position at 92s instead of 2303, probably would be feeling a little bit more comfortable with the position. And like I said, starting new positions can always be the hardest thing, especially when you're playing something that's a weaker name. As you can see, this has been a weak name and probably has some sort of downtrend meeting in right here as well. So flirting with that sort of decision area, it only has this short little uptrend, but maybe it just needs to confirm this uptrend a little bit better. So if it needs to come back in to 50s, that's going to be it's pushing it. It's pushing it for sure. And also not a lot of volume. But honestly, we don't really have anything else that we've seen. The Zim continuing to be strong. The go-to trade, this one's been a strong mover. Never played it. Wish I did now, looking back at it. Forward after hours earnings play today, given a nice move. Gap is at 1396. We haven't had any reloads on forward, but still holding that entry that we had down in the 11s fairly well. So we feel good about that. GME, this one is going to be the one that kills us today, huh? GME actually one of the only red positions that we have on the day, which kind of sucks to say, but you know, at the end of the day, it is what it is. I would say notable names to watch would be those airline plays. They've been pulling back in pretty good. They're really strong names. And honestly, all the earnings reports that I looked through with the airlines were pretty damn good as well. But profit taking takes the trump card over top of the solid earnings. The solid earnings was the move up before leading up to the earnings. But if it pulls back in, like AAL pulls back into 15s, that is an add for me or reload for me all day. And you can see DAL Above the ascending channel, it has a descending channel back into 45. So if you're looking for a scalp, I'd say off of 45 you can catch a bid for a couple dollars. But all in all, if this pulled back into 40, I would be a buyer for a long-term swing. More of a It's been a while since we've really even talked about the airlines, and AFRM coming all the ways back in as well. So some good trims on AFRM today, and GME all the ways back into the gap up. So let's go ahead and just put one last order in for GME and try and play this gap fill right here. This is kind of last resort type of. But we'll give it one last chance to maybe try and hold. You can see these higher lows and higher highs coming on in. Are we going to be able to continue holding? That is the real question. $22.72s right there. Red engulfing right through the level is always not the greatest thing either. Should take a look back at Lucid. Coming back in to the gap up level. Are we going to have buyers be able to hold it? Kind of the same look as that GME. So are these going to be able to hold these levels? That is going to be the question. Looking at the market, we can see the Nasdaq still strong, at least holding a percent and a quarter on the day. SPY green, Dow's green for this is the start of the 14th consecutive day for the Dow. If the Dow Jones can put up a 14th consecutive candle, I mean, just this day was slightly green, I believe. I believe it's on a winning streak every single day through this, which is, I think, a record from 1986, I believe I read an article on. AFRM came all the ways back in. So if AFRM comes in to this gap up price, so let's go ahead and put an alert on this for that 1805. That alerts us, and we'll put our eyes back on AFRM, and we'll try and reload early in the day still. So 30 seconds left on this candle. Let's see if we can get anything going here. Yeah, other than that, if there's anything that anybody wants me to take a look at, more than willing to. Uh, there is a gap fill, so let's see if any buying can start coming back in. I'd say 2260. That's the best risk I can run on the name. Not a great look. Each candle, not really showing much buying pressure whatsoever. So if we have to take a loss here, I don't know if I can tell myself, hey, we're gonna hold it in past 2260. Even though you do have this wick low that could hold at 22 half. But we did just get a fill off those 2270s. And Roblox coming on in too. So this might be a name that we have to put a stop at as well. So let's go 3920s. If that wants to trigger on the day, then Roblox is going to be a loser for us, which, you know, it sucks. Let's go 3920 stop loss. But this has been one that we've been trying to give a chance. But right off this uptrend, we're giving it 20 cents of room to the downside. GME, at least candles turn green off of that gap, so that's a good start at least. Not out of the woods yet, of course. NQ still showing a little bit of weakness. SPY still half. I'd say the notable strength has been oil. Looks like the indexes are kind of catching a little resistance. Oil looks like it's been pretty strong since the open. Nice volume coming in as well. So maybe oil play is the way to go. A firm about to give us an alert. This also is a green to red here as well. Let's sort by volume again. Lucid only a few pennies off of that 25, holding up a little bit better than some of these other names. Looks like everything's really come back in pretty well. A firm getting close. You know, we want to be prepared for that 75 gap, where we're just gonna buy back everything that we sold today. So telling myself off the beginning that, hey, this was probably a bad sell. Uh, we respected it as it kept moving, and we got to print above 19. If it comes all the ways back into 1775, we are going to add as we are approaching that level. Looking at the top movers on the day, only 2K volume on 10%. Yeah, not interested. Did Amazon report? No, it doesn't look like they did. Looks like they report Thursday, August 3rd. Not a half bad look on RX either. Probably has some sort of downtrend. GME, couple pennies in the money off that gap. Decent beginning, but not quite there yet. Roblox wicked as low as 39.50 or 35. I'd say maybe that Invax. No, we're not gonna do that. Tilray. Looks like we did just get a print on those 14. So rang the register on Tilray. Let's see if Tilray wants to be one of the strong movers. Continuation play. Flirted over top of the highs from yesterday at the opening candle and now reclaiming another high a day. NQ back to that 1.25%. So hopefully the market can continue being strong on the day. And we can get some of these names to start catching a bid. Let's go take a look at some of the positions. Yeah, it looks like the banks are staying strong. KRE, I was talking about that trim off 49.30. Looks like it's right back there. GME up to these 22.75. So at least we have one print that's working for us. But a nice trend line hold for right now. We'll see if there's anything meaningful there. I think the Tilray did print up for another high, so maybe we go on the bid or on the ask at 20 in front of 25s. Let's go 22s. Let's see if we can find any levels worth noting. You can see it has a couple bottoms right here. This couple lows right here, but even up to like 34s. So let's start at like 20s to 25s, and then go in off of 30s. And if it wants to catch a bit higher, it has this sort of, that seems to be the gap up price. Gaps up over top. We can see also probably has some sort of downtrend meeting into these 20s. So mapping that up with these lows, I'd say 22, 24 is a reasonable area to trim in front of. Looking at GME, trying to catch a bid, a nice little bounce, and we're in the last third of this candle, and you know, a nice green candle off of that trend line. So maybe that's a good start, something that we can start running to the upside. Hopefully, that's what the hope is, of course. But hopefully some of these other names, I can go take a look at Roblox. Maybe it's the same catalyst where, yeah, putting that green candle in, so not panicking, keeping true to that stop. We think that this can still reclaim 40s and be something there. The gap up really kind of put a wrench into my plan for the day, I would say, because, you know, my plan originally was to trim 40/50s uh, which is the start of these lows. And we said that if it can get over those 40 50s and hold, we don't see why it can't print. You can see the tops up near these 42s and holding of support. We think that we can get a retest of those 42s. Looking back at GME, catching a little bit of resistance, wicking into that shortable level, and also the second pullback candle, the body, and also the body of this red candle. So it's got a lot to work through, but the more it can hold this uptrend, the more all it would take is to start catching a bid and uh, scare some of the shorts out, or maybe add some longs back into the equation. BDRX was the short of lower float. We said that if it gets over top of the wick high from the day before, it has a chance for rejection. Does this need to come back into the 6 level? Or it does have a notable trend line, so maybe off of 610 we can add and keep an eye on BDRX. Off 614 we'll go. Let's take a look over at Lucid. Lucid wicking back into 710, so not really what I wanted to see, but as long as it's over 7, I don't think there's going to be anything that shakes me out of it. Uh, 2.5 minutes left on this candle. See what AMAT's looking like. Approaching that all-time high break, strong chart. ASTS claiming that 4, breaking through that sort of resistance in front of 4. GME up into these 80s again. Are we on this next candle yet? So a decent old bounce off of that trend line. We got a minute left. If it closed as a green candle like this, we don't see why it couldn't catch a bid, saying that it only had those 2 candles that, it gaps up, it tries to fill the gap, it makes a run, tries to give you a false break, comes all the ways back in, scares some of the longs for sure. I'm sure it scared some longs, but then having the strength to bounce off of that gap, good start. We got a minute left, so this could easily wick back into like 75s. But a close in around this level, I'd say, is a good start to the position. Warner Bros. Just continue setting those higher lows, and we do have a wedge pattern drawn here, but I'd say that trend line is notable. We're playing off of that 1250 level. It's probably good orders that you could if you were looking for something. Does it pull back in there today? I don't know, but you can see the wedge pattern that's pushing for. If it's able to break that wedge, I don't see why it couldn't catch a bid up to those 1770 gap would be a really good extension for the name. So trading at a decent premium, it's about 33%. Zim testing up to this 15. You know, we talked about it. Gives the flat bottom break. Are we going to get the test back up to that resistance up at 16? So we were thinking about just holding that for the strength that it has. Go back to GME now that we have the open of the next candle. Catching a little resistance, which is understandable. We're only a minute into this candle. So maybe we need to pull back into the middle of this green candle, but we want to start seeing it squeeze out some of these people that are getting in short on this red move to the downside. So a good candle close right there. It closed at 82s, it looked like. Zim right through those 15s. Tilray up to 217. So let's go on the bid or on the ask I meant, and just keep taking pieces off as it wants to run higher. We'll go 220. We'll just respect 220. If 220 wants to print, we'll ring the register. NQ staying strong, up 1.5% now. We're gonna take a look back at RBLX. Probably we're just gonna continue giving RBLX a little bit of time to work itself out. It's trying to build this support down here near these 39 halves. So price above 39.5. It's a good start to the hold, but I wouldn't say it's out of the weeds yet. GME through those 85s now. Got as high as 87s. So a good push. If it were to push up to like 2290s, 94s, which is the body candles in that wick low right there, 2295. I would feel really good about, if it were to retrace back into the 2275, confirm another higher low, giving you that sort of neckline break, and then if it were to reclaim and break over top of that, that would be your catalyst for a push of 23. Obviously theoreticals until it happens. Zim continuing to be strong. Nice volume coming in off of this day high break as well. BDRX coming in towards this BDRX. A full red engulfing candle into this level. I think I'd have to be crazy to try this. I mean, as wiki as it gets, still strength just isn't quite there. Say maybe 575s looks a little bit more realistic now that we keep putting in red engulfing candles. Let's go take a look back at GME. Up at 2286, showing you the wick of buying gaps up. Buyers are there off the gap. Let's see if we can get some price movement now. That's all we're looking for. Disney put wicks up towards that high day. IBM, I didn't even see this. Above my level, we have no prints in this sell window right here. Let's take a look at that. Showing some good strength. Really strong on the day. Maybe worthy of a trim on the name. Let's go take a look at the IBM. IBM, we still have a decent size on the position. Maybe worth a trim. 13% on the swing. So I'd say, that's a reasonable area to maybe take a little piece off. So let's go ahead and do so. $17 in the money on IBM. So ringing the register on IBM. I didn't even see that was up and as strong as it was today. $17 in the money is not easy to do on a stock that we've been holding for quite some time. $17 in the money, 10, that puts us down to 25s. Yeah, really good position to hold, and we held it all the ways back in the 30s. Yeah. GME 2281s. The part that is scary is if this were to start rolling over and then break down. You have the 3 red candles. Is this a bear flag in the making right here? I gotta go refill my coffee, let the dogs out, and I will be right back. And we are back. Nothing in the chat. Doesn't look like anyone's watching. That's alright. One of these days we're gonna have double digits of people watching me, asking questions, wondering about this, wondering about that. And that's what I'm waiting for. So, it is what it is right now, but gonna try and stay consistent and keep going at it. Tilray, looks like we wicked up to 20s. Let's see if we got that print off 20s. Let's see if we got the wick high print there. On the ASCAT 20s, did not get 20s. So just tapped some of those orders. So hopefully that was able to take out a chunk or two, and my order is next on the list, is what we're hoping for. But all in all, let's take a look back at Roblox. Roblox still holding in kind of the same little setup as GME, where it's got down trend line that's trying to hold gaps up, fills the gap. GME, let's see if we can push up to those 95s. And even if it wants to come back in off of that, hopefully it's not building this frowny face, and we get a red engulfing candle through the downside. That is what we were hoping doesn't happen. If you're looking for a risk reward trade, I'd say this cannabis ETF off of this 5 level is reasonable. Give it some pennies down below 5. That could pay off pretty well for you. MRO continuing to churn, gaps up, fills the gap into the middle of this green candle, and catching a bit to the upside. Oil names really strong. A lot of oil charts had this sort of look where it had a downtrend. It wasn't really performing the best over the course of this first half of 2023. But some of these oil plays they were gems, and I think people are going to regret not building into some oil positions. I mean, same story can go for XLE, which I thought was a more than reasonable fund to build, as it was holding this support down here in the mid 70s. And for all I know, this runs all the way back up in the 90s, and people are gonna believe me, if XLE runs up into the mid 90s, people are gonna be screaming out oil, and it's just like, man, why weren't you trying it off of those mid 70s as it bounce, 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 bounce? But I have nothing against people. Buy high, sell higher. It's a strategy that I use all the time. As long as the sell higher, sell high. Buy low, sell high, sell higher. Let's get a refresh. Let's see what this P runs all the ways into the gap, fills the gap. Has it look like we want to churn higher? Take a look over at Lucid. Hopefully this isn't a red engulfing through the downside. Probably has some sort of smaller term trend line right there, but I'd say this is a trend line we just want to see continue to hold. This wick high getting lower than over here, so some people still looking to cut the name down a little bit. And you can see that wick goes right in through that 702 up to that 786. Let's look back at GME. Still holding these 2780s. MRO with a nice little flat top break right there, breaking over top of the resistance, really holding that 34. Earnings coming up, expected $1.30 a share on $5.5 billion of revenue. $1.30 a share not only covers the dividend, but matching $1.30 to a $45 stock, I'd say that's a pretty decent support level that we have been playing on this, where the true breakout is going to come at this 48. If it can get over 48, I think you're going to see some sort of move to the top end of the channel. I know talking about this up at 60 seems crazy, as it hasn't been a very large mover. It doesn't get the most amount of movement in terms of stock price, but 2017 highs up at 76. I would not be surprised to see some of these tobacco names start catching a bid. Talking about putting up $1.40 EPS in these 40s. Almost sounds a little bit too good to be true, especially with an 8% dividend. But what do I know? BTI, let's see what that's looking like today as well. Nice strong candle day after the earnings. The earnings were just a cluster, you know what. To look through those international companies, they really have strange earnings. I think it was like a 56 page, something insane like that. BAC, we're looking for that next print level up at 34. We might even think about more sizable print. We've been taking 5% prints on the name. 31.5 off the 32 gap. Haven't had nothing left. Still holding a good chunk of that position. Trying to get more price movement to the upside. GME back into these 85s. Got as high as 90 though, so it tapped 90s. $22.87s. So a nice ad, almost a wick low on that 22.70 fill. Put up 350 in EPS. Maybe we can go take a look at that earnings report. See what's going on there. You put up 350 EPS for a $100 stock. That's pretty damn good. Doesn't pay a dividend. Go take a look. Develops, manufactures, markets, lifestyle footwear company. I'm sure Foot Locker's probably down off of this. But let's take a look at some of the financials. And a lot more growth than Foot Locker, I'll tell you that much. What was the revenue that they put up? Put up 1.7 bill in revenue, which year over year would represent about a 10%. So maybe a lot lower growth. Maybe that's what it's down for. Not any share dilution. Looks like they were actually buying back some shares before. Yeah, still buying back shares, but they put up over $1 billion in revenue, on pace for over $4 billion in total revenue for 23. That's solid revenue growth. Good margins. Holy, I wasn't expecting to look at this and see over 50% margins and 23% operating, 15% profit. See what the balance sheet's looking like. Got 200 mil in the bank. Maybe their quarterlies differently. Yeah, big significant decrease in cash right there, but a significant increase in receivables. So they still have receivables to collect. Total current assets 1.1 bill. Total current liability. So they got a 1.5, almost a 2, almost a 2.0 ratio. Not terrible. Long-term debt only 2.4 billion. 3 billion. So the cash to debt, not really the greatest. And they do have positive shareholders equity. Negative free cash flow in first quarter, maybe, but it looks like they year-over-year numbers from first quarter not half bad. Not very much stock-based compensation either. I like seeing that. That is very low for what this is trading at. See what the annual cash flow is looking like. Not bad on the cash flow side of things. Yeah, really not that much stock-based compensation for that stock price. Looks like they invest their money very well too. Consistently high ROE and ROA. Buying back shares, down 14%. There better be something in that earnings report that just looks like junk. Down 14%. I'd say that's a pretty solid earnings report. Or pretty solid financials to see something down 14% like that. But I think from everything I just looked at right there, I would say that's worthy of adding to the watch list for sure. So let's go ahead and do so. We'll add that to the watch list. GME kind of giving you this death candle right now, building this smaller frowny face. More shorts coming in the middle of this red move. And see right at that half, that 22.91. NQ catching some resistance as well. Maybe the start of a trend, and it looks like we are going to get stopped out maybe off of the roadblocks, which not too many ways we can adjust that trend line. We either get stopped out or not. Let's take a look at Lucid. Maybe everything is just catching some downside. 713, at least it's over 7 still. Affirm, right at this 1807. This support up into these 17s looks pretty legit. But that wick top right there would be scary to play with. Tilray wicking up as high as 20s. Did it get back up there? It did not. So no fill on Tilray. Zim rejected those 15s as well on larger volume. So maybe if it falls back underneath 1460, think about a trim. DocuSign kind of coming back in as well. Still up 2.25%. Affirm about to alert us right here, so it's gonna put it on watch for us. Alibaba read the green, so we gap up, retrace all the ways back into 95.80 and now back up over 97. Building that flat top, kind of. Maybe a downtrend forming there. Top end of the channel up at 99. Back at GME. Zim trying to get back to those 15s. Lucid still holding above these 17 or these 7s. Really not the worst look. And there's AFRM crossing over. Some good prints right up in the 18. Let's re-put that alert in off of 1790. As it's getting close to that gap. We're going to make sure that that is on our minds when this pulls into 17.75. Continues to pull back in for AFRM. GME holding this price level. Let's put this back on watch if it falls back underneath 22.75. Roblox. Looks like we did get stopped out there off of that 20 break. Yep. So hopefully that isn't the wick low right there. That'd be kind of embarrassing, and not to give it just an extra 10 pennies. As of right now, it looks like it could be. It's possible. But that is going to be the exit of the Roblox position. Sadly enough. Lucid still holding in. AFRM wicked down as low as 90. Just move that alert down to 85s. Intel, a nice move on Intel right there. Looks like a trend line hold as well. Give or take something like that. Let's clear everything, go to a daily chart. Still holding the Intel long. I mean, this was a almost clear as day type of long right here, where you had this descending channel. Give or take something like that. You push through it and you retest the top of it. Kind of broke down through the levels, but gives you a nice move. Now just some sideways consolidation. Has earnings after hours. Big earnings day. For some of the plays that we have. That reminds me, eBay. I looked at those earnings reports yesterday, and honestly, I thought they were pretty good earnings. I thought eBay had pretty good earnings. I seen it was down 5% or something after hours, down to those middle 45s. But looking at the daily, I would say this has a stronger uptrend, where this could be reasonable play down in these 40 flat areas. So looking for that to catch a bit to the downside. Hibbit, they're just gonna remind me every day that you didn't start your position in the mid 30s. You're an idiot. Just wants to remind me every day, doesn't it? No volume. Oil up at that 80. Tapped over it briefly. Oil is strong. Strong, strong, strong. Foot Locker, not a terrible look, but still has some kinks that needs to work out. I'd say your true breakout level, try that 28. So early entries on the Foot Locker, but holding this base support down here in these mid 20s. At the volume, Mullen, one of the top volume every day and does nothing every single day. Waiting for that positive break. We said the same thing with XELA, that we weren't going to trade it, but we did. So if Mullen started setting up kind of like XELA did, maybe. But kind of a big ask. Soundhound still catching a bid to the downside. Strength isn't there, and the strength comes back for that name. We are going to play it. PBR, strong move, pullback day, that's fine. Baba still holding 97s. I think we may even try this gap off 94.5. Lucid still holding around that 715. Affirm crossing over. Okay, let's take a look at this. Go to the 15. GME not really doing nothing. Yeah, not a good candle look off of that roadblocks. We thought it was a reasonable set. No profit takes up to that 41, which looked like a shortable level, as it was. Zim holding 15s. Showing a little wick of buying on this Affirm, so maybe that's a good start. really not much volume in these candles right here. Now up 22.87. Is this going to be able to catch a bid? Is there some sort of uptrend right here that's holding? 22.88. Maybe we have something brewing here. Possible. Minute left on this candle. Zim holding above 15s. GME, 20 seconds left. Are we going to get anything here in this back half of this candle? I can see a firm up there. Sitting at 1796. Giving me a little bit of comfort for this gap if it wants to come back down in there. So let's put that alert in. A firm back over 18. GME given a nice setup right here, where if it pulled back in even anywhere near these lows and set some sort of confirmed higher low, this is really setting up the breakout level right here around these 90s. If it wants to go right now, we're all for it. 20 pennies in the money from that gap fill order, but we were starting the position up in these 23s. So by no means is GME out of the woods yet, but looking at the daily candle of it, more of an indecision. So nothing really ripping one way or the other, but up to 91s right now. So able to continue this. Ooh, 92s. I'd say that true level that we want to see it get over is the body of that candle and the wick of this candle, which is at 95s. And I'd say that'd probably be a reload type of area. Anybody who had a beautiful entry off of this short, or maybe took the breakdown of 90 or 23s and trimmed it all the way down to the gap, they got their fill at 70s. So now maybe if this catches a bit into the middle of this red move, maybe this is where we see some reloads come in. But I like the position that we have. We have two of our four fills are in the money, two of them out of the money. Both of those fills came above 23s. I'd say Tilray giving you that pullback candle, a little increased volume, but understandable with how long a consolidation. I'm sure you had some profit taken of some buyers in here, which would have been me if that 20 gave us the fill. But we still think we're going to get that 20 of the fill. And we think we can actually print this up to, the 30s, where we have that downtrend, where we're going to play it a little bit more aggressive. Any trims up here, the pullback into 2 is going to be a no-brainer type of fill for me. RBLX giving up the levels. This one was the weaker of the bunch, so maybe a good stop out there. Lucid still holding above 7s. I'm sure it has some sort of trend line hold right there. XELA. We haven't really talked about XELA much, but actually reclaimed 6. So that print on XELA, I would say was a good print. We got 632s, which was our highest print, so almost wick high of the day. You know, had it would have run up to 650, I think I would have continued printing the name. But notably strong. Let's go take a look back at GME. Still holding these 2290s, a lot of time left on this candle. But it is showing that wick into the middle of this red move here, which continues. It just gave up 90s. So does this need to pull back in before we can set this higher low and get some movement? A reclaim of 23 I think is going to be an interesting setup. But still a ways away. I wouldn't chalk that down just yet. We'll mark that down with a pencil. That way we can erase it if we're wrong. Hey, look at that oil. Oil still holding above 80s. I'd say this is the bigger type of move, you know, whether you have some sort of channel like this or not. You know, kind of showing you like we're confirmed through this downtrend. Are we going to see a test up into 80s? I'm really not even sure what the moving average is in Tilray. Up to 219. Let's see if we can get this print. Let's watch this live here. See if we can get this 220 print here. You know, I think it's safe to say we took some profits above these twos right off the open, trimmed up to these tops up here as well. Took another fill here, took another fill at 14, trying to get 20s right now. So from where we were playing this risk reward trade, 13% can't complain with, but we did throw an order off this gap off 94s in case it pulled back in. We were looking to reload it. I think it's safe to say that we can take that order off for today. Up at 19s on a full green candle. I'd be shocked if this didn't give us a 20 fill. Maybe let's take a look and see what's on the ask here. Showing 19s, but 19s, we got 650 lots on 19s that we got to fight through. Which, I mean, there's a lot of volume coming into this name. Both ways, selling and buying pressure. Tilray's filling up the book, so there's going to be liquidity on every level. GME still holding 90s, so not counting out the fact that we can just slow churn to the upside. It's already showing you the stair step, so you know, even if it pulled back into 85s, I think that can still act as support and actually claiming over 90s right now. Oh, Ripley, you're killing me. But keeping an eye on this Tilray. Hasn't been able to chunk through. Now we have 700 lots on the ask. You know, the way that candle is setting up, I'd be shocked if this candle didn't end up filling 20s. Zim below 15. Let's take a look back at AFRM. Still under 18. How is this going to be off the gap? Is there anything else that we can see here besides the gap being the red or green to red? Tilray still trying to fight through. Size continuing to stack on 19s. So got a good chunk that's going to have to fight through still. But we do have 300 lots on the bid. That has been pretty consistent. GME still holding above these 90s is a good look. Just watching AFRM. Tilray did give up those 18s briefly. Down in the 17s. Wicking up to that. Is that a double top? You know, I'm sure a smaller time frame would be like, oh, yep, double top, get out. Oh yeah, double top, get out. No, no. Bigger picture, just flip it to a 15. You can see this sort of bull flag continuation setup already showing you increased volume breaking over the previous candle. See the bigger picture. That's what I would say. And you can see the bigger picture kind of on a 5-minute. Yeah, more volume coming in. Still a minute left. Looks like we are going to get back-to-back 5-minute candles of increased volume. But right back up to these 19s. And 690 lots on 19s. Continuing to chip away at it a little bit. It was up to 750. Roadblocks continuing to wick into that stop area where we got stopped out. There's only so much you can do, but this looks like a flat bottom break where, let's go push down into the 37s potentially. Zim continuing to hold above 15s. T-net came all the ways back in. I would say, based off of the chart setup, giving you that consolidation gap up, pull back into 98, 99 seems reasonable. Decent beat, about 40-cent beat, and beat on revenue significantly, 10%, about 32 mil. But you can see the uptrend. T-net was the one that we took pretty good profits. Actually exited the position, never got the re-entry. Probably should have. In those mid-70s, it looked pretty juicy. And I think those earnings speak for themselves. When you put up $1.70 a share, talking about it down at 75 seems a little bit too good to be true. RXRX is still continued to hold around right here. I'll show you the 15-minute chart. You can see gaps up and now just holding this level. So I mean, risk reward, in itself, could be there, or you could wait for some sort of pullback into this gap over price. But RXRX not a half bad look. GME catching a bid, full green candle, 22.94. So still good shares and still bad shares bought with this name, but we like this stair step action that it has. Even if it pulled back into 85s, we think it has some pretty good chance. Tilray tap some more 19s right there. I seen it run through the tape briefly. 756 lots on 19, still 300 lots on 18, so they're trying to push it up. Are we going to be able to get that 20 print? I think we're going to find out. Did it tap 20s? Nope, it didn't. Now 800 lots on 19s, which, still isn't a ton, but still hasn't been able to chip away any of that size on the ask. TUP, nice stair step action, probably continues throughout the rest of the day. I'd be surprised if it had continuation leading on to Friday, but you never know. You just never know. Shop coming back in. This just reminds me to check out AFRM. AFRM into these 80s, about to get alerted. There is the alert on AFRM. 775. Do we try the order? Let's see. Let's go calculate everything that we trimmed. Got a chunk there, chunk there, chunk there. We got 3 prints on the name. I see no reason why we shouldn't at least attempt it off of those 75. So let's go ahead and throw a bid out there. And are we going to be a cheap ass on 5 cents? I think we should be. I think we respect it. We go in front of it a little bit though. Let's go 77s. Being a cheap ass for 3 cents here. There's 78 coming on in. There's 77s. And let's just go ahead and there's our punch in. We are in on some AFRM shares off that gap. We'll see if we can wick into this whatsoever. Tilray still wasn't able to tap 20s. GME, we talked about the 95. That's the level that we want to see it get over. Minute left, showing a wick. Not as much of a stair step action now. Wouldn't be surprised if this started showing you that curl. Boom. Their AFRM officially filled the gap up. Are we going to start catching a bid off of this gap? Disney, a nice, notably decent hold. Nice sideways consolidation right to the first level. If it continues to hold 86, I'd say actually one of the better setups from what we're looking at. I haven't looked at Lucid, but I would say that's probably the same sort of setup. Not as much sideways, but pulling into the level. Is this going to be able to build some sort of U shape where we can see it back over 725s? Maybe that's worthy of an alert underneath 7s. Tilray still continuing to chip. See if that has now 900 lots on 19, but 500 lots on the bid. Bid stacking. The ask is also stacking. 1,000 lots on 19. Now 918, so able to chip away some. Now 899, 780. Bid is up to 650, showing you that, hey, enough people are starting to realize that, hey, this could catch a bid to the upside, and just like that, guys, that gave us our 20 fill. So ring the register on 20s. Let's see if we can get some further movement to the upside, or we're going to play 28s for that next level. GME still holding 85s, as I said when we were up here. I don't see why 85s can't hold as support. AFRM showing a green candle at the open, but got a lot to fight through still. So by no means is AFRM just out of the woods because it filled the gap. We just respected it because, I mean, we just bought back what we trimmed off that opening candle. So it hasn't really changed anything from where we're sitting. And I see no reason to get out. It has a solid trend line right there. So even if this pulled back into 17, you know, maybe that's an opportunity to add more to the position. Looking at the daily chart, strong name, gives you this wick top into this level. That doesn't mean it can't trade down the 17 before it catches a bid. You're kidding me, I don't have my water. Firm still able to hold green for now. See if we got anything there. Mr. Rudy, how's it going? I'm well, thanks. Sorry to miss your stream yesterday. There was congressional hearing on UFOs. Hey, that's alright. That's alright, Drift. You don't gotta apologize. Sounds like you had good reason. You know, that's one thing I always say about sorry. You know, I don't mean to go into, you know, how to apologize. But I'm only sorry about things that I wish I could go back and redo. And it sounds like you had something that you needed to do that day as the congressional hearings on UFOs. That's more than reason. Yeah, there's nothing to be sorry with there. I'm doing good. Playing GME GameStop. Uh, we were playing it like this flat top early in the day, right? Where we were playing this 23 break. And this is one thing that I just can never get through my head, that, sometimes being patient off that open, if we just clear everything and just mark that flat top, sometimes being patient off that open is something that I should do better with. A lot of times you can get that golden entry. Like if this was ripping to the upside, uh, significantly above 23, I'd be sitting there calling myself a genius. But the orders I was using off this 23 break was a little bit more than usual. But then as I seen it wicking below this, I was thinking about orders, and then we actually tried orders off of 92s, 88s, no, 90s, 86, and then we tried the gap. So we tried the gap off of 70. So we have some good fills, we have some bad fills. Is it going to be able to show us any movement to the upside? Kind of playing it like a trend line right here, where if we look a little bit further, you have multiple trend lines, and then if we go to the daily, the true trend line that we're playing is in around this level. Boom, boom, boom. Now, is it going to be able to hold tight wedge right here? So this was our catalyst for, hey, a 23 break, we could be seeing this name print up where your flat tops up at 27. So looking at a $4 premium, just probably a little bit too early. And, had I held or waited more patiently for this move back in and started off the gap, our position would be sitting a lot better. But as of right now, looking more short term, the level we want to see get over is the body of this candle and the wick of this candle. At one point in time, this was a full green candle, and we said, hey, it has a nice stair step, boom, consolidation, boom. But now rejecting. Now, we don't see why these 85s can't hold. You can see a little wick of buying coming in right there. So if we're able to get over 95s, we think that's a catalyst for a potential 23 break, which is over top of these wicks. So that's what we're looking for. A firm, we talked about it over here where we didn't respect 1850s. So when we got the gap up, we didn't want to risk it coming all the ways back in off the open. So we took a print. I think my print came in at 34s. We respected 59s, and my best print was a 1912. Now it pulled back in. We set a couple different alerts on the way to the downside. Now we just bought back everything that we trimmed off this opening candle, which was about 20 to 30% of the position. And we don't think it's out of the woods yet. We just respected the gap of being, you're sitting red to green right here. Or green to red is what it's about to do. But if this needs to pull back into, maybe this is Friday, or maybe we even go into Monday of next week down in the 17, that's where we're going to be looking to add more to the position. Because we really don't have the most amount of size, so we just figured, hey, we have a good entry. We just got some trims up above 19. We're back in at the red or green to red. Let's just buy back those shares and just hold. So that's the idea there. RBLX was the disappointing one for today, and actually a good stop. I would love to say on this gap up we printed it, but with the gap up holding above 40s, we thought that we'd be able to at least print this up to 42s. And you can see all these wicks. This is 42 3/4, 42 half, but you can see these wick lows. So all in all, if you mark the bodies here up to this 42, we thought we'd be able to print it, and that's adding in that you have a channel or a trend line that's trying to hold. That also dates back further over here. But a red engulfing through it, at some point in time, you got to have a give and a take. So we were playing this bottom trend line the last couple days, and now we're out of RBLX. It is what it is. There's only so much I can say about that. But here's your gap up. It'd be lovely to have gotten some prints, but being above this flat top, and before we talked about these lows right here, we said, hey, we want to trim 40-50. If we would have got 40-50 yesterday, we would have trimmed it. But we gapped up over it, and I said, hey, why can't we run up to this 42 range? You can see the lows that's putting right there. And we just didn't get that. So, yeah, it is what it is. We're stopped out of it now, and we had a good stop on it. So, we gave it to these wick lows here. I think it was a 39.20. 39.20. So really gave up the ghost there. So it sucks to look back and say we could have played it better, but there's only so much that you can do. Lucid, we're still playing the Lucid, and catching a bit off of this trend line is a good start, but we've been playing this 7 level. No trims on the name, so kind of the same story with Roblox where, man, why didn't I get some trims up there? But we were talking about this flat top where we said over 730, we think this can catch a bid. A full green candle off the open above 730, just buyers weren't there. That doesn't mean it can't just build this sort of wedge pattern up to that. But this name, unlike Roblox, has been holding this 7 pretty well. And if we're able to get a true break above that 730, we don't see why we can't print this up in the 8s. Where you'll be talking about a breakout price above this 850. See that flat top. A little bit of a false break, reject hard, test, test, test. So if we're able to get that breakout level up there, we think that we can print 10 off the gap. So all in all, we're not worried as much about Lucid as we were. But Tilray catching a bid. We were playing Tilray support level down here. Risk reward, we just kept rinse repeating and putting stops in at 88. 88 was below the start of the gap. It held all day. We trimmed right off the open. We trimmed up to these highs. We trimmed up at 14, which was that breakout level, and we trimmed 20s. We didn't get it here. We got it here. But wicking up to the top end, we said we wanted 30s. And now it just rejected 28s like that. So we think that we can go on the ask here at 30s and get a print. So let's just go ahead and do so and keep respecting the levels. I will say that when we trimmed that 202 right off the open, we also put an order in at 194 to reload everything that we'd trimmed before. And just didn't pull back in. This one has stayed strong, and we see no reason for it to stop right now as it's just taking out the highs. A little bit of a wick top on some increased volume. We can go look and see what that looked like. So selling pressure in the middle of that 1 minute candle. So selling and buying in this, it isn't all buying. But are we going to be able to hold 20s? Looking back at the 15 minute, it looks strong. Even if it pulls back into 218, we think we can get further movement to the upside. So let's just go off of 228 actually for our next trim level. If that wants to print, we'll keep ringing the register on that name. TUP, we tried it yesterday. We had a good fill, and then we had an exit of the break at 2. Took a full green trade, but also getting the gap up sucks. MNK, this one sucked because we were sitting there watching it as it put this wick, and we're like, man, we just missed that entry just briefly. That's the part that scared us was this increased red volume and right back into the level. We just weren't sure if we wanted to try. Had we tried it, man, that would have made our whole day, and we'd probably still have a piece of it going into the day. Would have trimmed it right off the open. Dang, it sucks. But in terms of small cappers, there isn't really anything on my watch list, and I can see a firm giving up that level. So maybe back into 1750 is worthy of maybe adding just a little bit more. But I think we can maybe be patient for the trend line. We wanted to respect the gap. We were aware that this is a bearish setup right here, about ready to give this negative break on a 15. But yeah, that is everything. And we did have a trim on Zim as it was pushing. I think we got it at sort of these highs around 1468. Wicked up through 15s. But once it showed me that it could set at least a green candle, if it can hold above this 1475, we think that we can get this flat bottom break where it gaps all the ways down. So the closer we can get to 16, that's where we'll actually maybe think about. Actually where we'll probably think about an exit of the position as we were just playing the support level. No, we were playing the 13 break. Playing the 13 break on this green candle, small entry, held the level very well, never came back into this gap where we're looking to reload. Just never gave us that opportunity. And now printing up at the 15s, we'll just keep respecting that to the upside. So back to GME, I believe that was everything on the. Yep, that's XELA. We did have a 632 print. That was the only print that we had on the register today, but a nice continuation following the channel, respected the top end of the channel. We never got the high print, but the 32s, we said, hey, that's good enough to respect, and pulled back in, now trying to hold 6. So Zila, strong chart as well. And then Disney, we played this support level around these 85 halves yesterday. This is around that Fed meeting. And, as the market started pushing, we said, hey, let's try it. We're sitting right here, right above these 85 50s, which is a decent support level. We didn't try it off the open, pulled back in right to the bodies of the candle. So that's what we liked about it. Caught a bid, and then we actually bought a little bit more in these 85 80s, somewhere in there. It wicked all the ways back in the 60s. That's all right. Well, giving the gap up, I'd say Disney actually has a more solid setup on the day, as it's been a lot more sideways consolidation. Are we going to be able to print higher? But where this sideways consolidation, here's your gap fill. So you filled the gap, sell off, reclaim, and just holding sideways around this level. If we're able to catch a bid, we think this truer neckline break comes in at 88. So over 88, we are bullish on the name. Oil is the last thing I'll talk about, and then we'll go back to the trades. Oil flirting above those 80s is significant in my opinion. Given that bullfly continuation play, you know me best, Drift. We were playing the oil. We were bullish down here off of this support level, and we said that one day we think we're gonna come back up and retest these 82s. I had people calling me crazy, saying, "Dude, oil? Are you kidding me? You're talking about oil right now when tech is pumping?" I said, I like the valuation. I like the value. If I'm able to get it a crack at that support, I know that there's some downside risk into these lower 60s and maybe even into the 50s. But we simply just connected the pieces together. Uh, we connected the dots and we said, hey, these oil companies are increasing dividends. They're buying back shares. They had a strong 22, so it makes sense that for a little bit of a sell-off into 23. But then you add in some of the new stuff. We're cutting supply, increased inputs in China. I've seen some articles on, and then you talk about the refineries, the United States reloading the refineries and stuff like that. I normally don't go into new stuff like that. But when you're talking about all that news tying into the supply of oil, for this support level to bounce off of these upper 60s as many times as it did, I was telling people, hey, I think you're going to regret not at least dipping into some oil. And it's not really it's a notable move. 18%. Well, you look at the NASDAQ. NASDAQ is up like this. It's like bouncing off a support level or play the continuation on strength. Where if you look at this positive break back in January, here's where you get this positive break. Boom, you pull right back in. Big players around this middle ground. Hasn't looked back since. When this gives this negative break to the downside, I'm going to let you know right now. Maybe it rips up to the all-time high. Maybe it even rips higher. But when this gives that negative break, I think you're going to see some larger slides like this. Like you look at a negative break right here. Boom, there's your negative break. Shoom. Look at your negative break right here. Boom. It even gives you a retest of that middle ground. Boom. Here's your negative break right here. Nice sell-off. Well, obviously, this support level in right here sets a nice confirmed higher low. But it's just like, when does it need to stop? But the channel break and retest of the top end of the channel was also a juicy look on the NASDAQ. I have nothing against the tech names. I just think it's been a nice run. But comparing oil to that run, I'd say potentially actually getting some sort of channel break as well, where you were rejecting it. Well, now pushing it. And I'm sure there's probably some moving average in right there as well. I'm not 100% sure. But if this were to reject off 82s, come back into these mid 70s and retest this downtrend, I'm still going to be sitting there saying, hey, I still like oil, even off of these lows. So that's kind of one. Oil keeps tech moving. It very well could. Uh, it very well could. But looking back at GME, let's focus back up. GME, what is the story here? You know, I do like the catalyst for, if it pulls back in, sets a higher low, that breakout price above the body and the wick is going to be the catalyst for a 23 break. But we'll see when the time comes. But since nothing's really moving, a firm getting as low, so like big players around that positive and negative break. Is this going to turn into a short? If it rejects 18 and starts to roll over, and why I say 18 is 18 is the whole level, but you also have these wick lows right here. So rejecting the previous low could mean some further continuation down, but holding green at that gap fill. So just respecting the gap is all we were trying to do. If it goes up, great. If it goes down, great. I believe with the position that we're holding right now, we have no interest in cutting this position. So a little bit different of a situation comparing it to Roblox. But I did add a new ticker to the watch list today, Drift. Uh, it should be on these. I forget what the ticker is. Crocs. I just seen it was down, or seen it was a red mover. But they reported 359 and over a bill in revenue. I was like, Crocs, what do they do? First off, is this like the Crocs, like the shoe company? So what I did is I pulled up the financials and I said, hey, it is Crocs, the footwear. And looking at the max chart, you can see ran up to as high as 180 and then got as high as 150, give or take, pulling back in. I was thinking to see like a low margin type of company with not really that much growth. Maybe they reported a crummy earnings report, but then I started looking at it, and I was like, man, they're putting up some massive growth. They put up 1.07 billion, so if they're able to even put up close to 4 billion, that's still pretty solid growth. On top of that, shares, they've been buying back shares. So it's not like you're getting diluted as an older. But then I seen the margins. I was like, what? How can this company possibly have over 50% margins? That's insane to me. For a shoe wear company, operate at over 20%, profit at 15%, free cash flow at 14%. We looked at some of the levels. I'd say the biggest red flag is the cash equivalents. But getting that cash, you still have a lot more receivables. 437 million in receivables. It's just the debt, the 2.2 billion in long-term debt. Maybe a little bit high comparing it to the cash, and the cash flow is about 400 million in the last 2 years. Touch continue waiting about 5 years to pay off their long-term debt. Current ratio about that 2.0, 1.1 billion. Current liabilities of 665, so close to that 2.0. So not really in jeopardy of going out of business either. We'll look over at the cash flow. The other part I liked about it is I don't know if this is accurate or not, but they had no stock-based compensation and low stock-based compensation actually decreasing. You'll see some companies that have 500 something million stock-based compensation a quarter, just like Jesus. But I did think that was a decent positive, even though they still have stock-based compensation, which I think is, I hate it. Because you'll have companies that are buying back shares, but then they mark it off by issuing shares with their stock-based compensation. It's just like, well, why do you even have a share buyback program at that point? You know what I mean? But all in all, the big kicker on it is how they invest their money. Uh, Return on invest capital, let's look at that annual. Not terrible. You can see a little bit of a decrease right here, but consistently over the last 5 years, we're fairly consistent with their return on invested capital. So maybe I just all in all thought it was a better company than what I was going to go see when I seen that it was down. Uh, what did we down 15% on the day? So you can see that top. We retracing. Man, look at that retest of these highs down towards 50. So this one is going to be one that's on watch. Yeah, a fresh negative break, so all in all I'd expect continuation, but down here at 94.5, I think I may start trying it. And you have some good support in off these highs here, which also meets in at a gap right here at 81. So maybe if I don't try 94, if it gets down to 80.5, we're going to pull the trigger on it. But yeah, I haven't looked through their earnings report actually, but I did see that their financials really weren't half bad. Looking at Tilray, let's see if we got that fill. Looks like it taps 28. Nope, guys, high is 27.27, so we're on the ask here at 28. Notable move off these lows here. Let's see if these 25s can hold. But off of these lows, a lot of our prints were these low 90s. It's a nice move, 16%. GME still holding those levels, so a nice hold of these previous tops right here. I still think that it's given the look like we need to pull back into 75s, which is why we have that alert in right here. We have no trims on the name. We're trying to hold this, and I'll show you. I did go over the daily, but really nice green move, just kind of buying this consolidation range. So let's go ahead and put a retracement through this. You can see this level that's been trying to hold is at 702 as well. So if this is near those lows before we get a retracement back up to 27, I'm all for it. But looks like we are going to get a test up to these 90s. And let's go take a look again at these top movers. TUP been the strong one of the day. AMD, a nice notable move. I talked about this on the live stream a little bit yesterday, how this support level keeps holding right here. And this 108 is simply just a gap fill. Mark the gap, boom, gaps up, retraces all the ways back in, and this is where we've set this support level at. So going over to the daily, we do still have a piece of our AMD position from this original positive breakdown in the 70s. So yeah, you take positive. This is in November. You retrace down. Now we get into January. This was one of my better plays where we were playing this 70s. As soon as it took this neckline, and we trimmed this all the ways up. We looked at it as an ascending channel. You can see the channel, and we were hitting reloads off of 88s. It pulls all the ways back in. We said, hey, that's fine. If we pull back in, we got a gap fill down here at 70. But AMD, I still just have a very small piece of this where I think if it can hold this support, you can see the catalyst of that confirmed higher low. If this were to start catching a bid and gets over 120, that would lead me to think that, hey, we can go back up here and test the highs. But look at where that gap up comes. Gaps up through that and now starts trading back in this channel. So even if it pulled back into like that 100 flat, this is where I'd be thinking more of reloads. For a tech name, I'd say AMD would be one of those, but uh, this is more so looking out ahead because you look at Nvidia, their EPS to share price isn't there, but they forecast that, in the upcoming quarters, we're going to kill it. So you can see it just trades at a premium. So it's like I'm not going to chase it right here when I think that I can get bottom end of the channel where would give me a lot more reason to try this around this 100 flat range. Tilray, did that give us that print up at 28? It says the high is 27. I could have sworn it printed 28 at least one time. Zoom was also another name we were watching yesterday. As soon as it took that 70 break over the body of that candle, that's what we were looking at yesterday. And I'll show you what it looked like on the 15-minute. Makes a move off the open, trades, and then as soon as it takes this 70 again, this is where we're looking at it. And we're like, I don't know if we want to try this flat top. The Fed meeting was like right here. So it's like, this was one of the few that actually moved before the Fed meeting. So that kept me away from it. And then when it was after the Fed meeting, we had our eyes elsewhere, and we seen it put a nice green move up. We could have bought it in at the 71s, but we said that it was a strong setup. I'm not surprised that it gapped up and is showing strength on the day. We look at the daily, strong name, makes the move, takes out this flat top around 72s, pulls back in, and then had that setup leading into the Fed. I'm not surprised. I wouldn't be surprised to see this print up towards this gap up here. So taking that 70 break up for 77 was what the initial plan would have been. But yeah, that is what we've seen. So maybe let's go take a look back at Lucid. Lucid still holding above 7, hasn't triggered my alert. Uh, I do like this play, holding above positive. So playing this like a true swing trade, we think we can get this name up at 10. So if we're thinking 10, that's like a, what, 40% from where we're at? 40%. Hey, that's pretty good math right there, Drift. Yeah, give it to me. Uh, when I do math in my head, I don't do that bad. GME still trying to fight around this level. That does remind me, we did have another one, TRP, is that what it was called? We added this one to the watch list yesterday. I'm glad to see it down. We don't have the entry in this yet. But a nice support level that's pulled into, and this is an oil name where oil has been strong. They have an earnings on Friday pre-market. So tomorrow in the pre-market, expected 95 cents. You got a dividend of 93 cents. So that payout ratio isn't really the greatest. Put up 120. There you're covering it. Put up 111 on a gap basis. You're negative, so that doesn't really count for covering it. But still some increase in dividend. So confidence in the business model. I do like that, but I'd like to see more buybacks. But TRP is one that just the strength isn't there yet. But you can see back in at the same levels it was from 2013. Yeah, it just has a red engulfing. Was looking to see it actually pump up and retest those 50s, but if this can keep dropping, where are we looking for some price movement? We have these wick lows right here, so maybe we can mark that. But here we are. Let's see if we can find some gaps. You know, if this stayed weak all the way down to that 45, I think that 45 level is where we're going to start playing this. That would represent about a 10% dividend from 45. I don't feel like jumping into any of the financials just yet, but XELA catching a bid, looking strong, setting up that neckline. Now, are we going to get a nice green candle up today's high here? I wouldn't be surprised to see it has a nice uptrend that it tested right there. See that bounce? Confirmed higher low off that pullback as well. Take a look back at GME. Oh, GME back over those 2290s, so good look here. Let's take a look back at AFRM. AFRM up to those 90s, so a nice reload off of those 75s. If this were to push up in the 18s, maybe we can think about trimming around that 18. Gives a false break at 18. But if this were to catch a bid up to the upside, I think it does have a reasonable channel. So top end of the channel meeting in a test of that 19 again. Could be something that we think about. But looking at the daily candle, at least it's showing that buying pressure. Before it was showing this death candle full red engulfing to the downside. If it shows and holds this wick and we reclaim 18, that's an indecision candle on a strong name, strength of 125. Today it does fill that gap right here. So before it wicked up and got close, now we truly filled that gap right there. So if this were to take out the highs, we see no reason why it couldn't print up to this flat top up here at 21s. Flat top gap. Has a wick top, but you know, got some resistance built in over here where it also has a low. So we like that little setup that it has. We said Disney was a stronger BR back launch. That's fine, Drift. Disney was just kind of holding flat right here. Now I'm kind of giving up the level. How does it act if it retraces back in down towards the gap? Oh boy, oh boy. GME catching a bid through those 95s. Here we go. Let's just put up a green candle up through those 23s. How about that? That would be lovely. But testing these body candle in the wick low right here, which is sort of that flat top area. So do we see a rejection right here, pull back into the trend line? Give or take something like that. Wouldn't be surprised to see it pull back in the 75s, but I think 75, that's a reasonable setup. If it's able to do that, of course. Tilray just wasn't able to fill that order off 28s. It seems like I keep putting those limit orders right at those tops where it has that resistance. But we're looking for a wick top into those 30s, which is where we have our downtrend marked. GME up to those 23s, holding a nice green candle here. This is a true testament right here. This kind of reminds me of Ford a little bit. Not exactly like Ford, but how we started that position off that flat top on Ford, pulled back into the gap where we actually built the position out, now catching a bid. Over 23s, I would say it looks reasonable. RBLX still showing some downside. Jets ETF. Nice hold of that base there. But same story, you know, pull back into that 20 flat, be more reasonable. FVRR gaps up, holding strength still. As long as it's holding this gap fill right here, which it looks like we don't quite fill, got close. Mobileye also with a pretty notable setup. Looks like they reported pre-market today. Positive EPS at least. Does it need to finally crack this trend line, test back in, set some support levels down? Tilray wasn't able to give us that top print there. Nope, it was not. GME, are we through 20? Oh, through 30, 23s now. Oh boy. The question is, with GameStop is, we got the entries that we like. Now, where are some levels that we can think about trimming? We think this is right around that breakout level, where we kind of have that false break, and here we're putting in a nice green candle. Anybody short off that open right there, now more than likely out of the money, and profit takes off of the gap fill, reasonable. Your reload coming in around the half of this red move. Uh, we really like this trend line that's holding right here, and I love when I can get entries on positions that are weak strength, and if they can reclaim positive, my positive level is around a 2350. So if this is an early entry for a 2350 break, we're going to be pretty excited to see this position play out. But multiple factors of why we like this. To start off, boom, there's your uptrend. You retrace down, you get damn close to this gap. So you gap up on this earnings day, you retrace all the ways back in, just barely doesn't get there. You make a push up, you're building this flat top up here at 27. You pull back in. This move down, gaps all the ways down, nice move off of that trend line as well. Now if we use a retracement tool off of that, you can see where we've been holding is this 702. Boom, boom, boom. And now starting to make this trend line into something more legitimate. Let's get rid of this fib tool right there. You can see the catalyst. I mean, you can see the catalyst for this breakout, and you can see the volume starting to come in here. Are we going to get a truer breakout where, you know, I think this looks like a hold right now. I don't think we're going to try and trim this level whatsoever. So let's go. We'll look back at that, and hopefully it's higher. Lucid still holding that trend line. That's pretty good. There, Affirm. We'll see if this is catching a bid. Hitting some reloads off this gap fill. Not half bad yet, but not out of the woods by any means. We said the retest up to 18, which is why we marked that. And then also these wick lows right here is going to be more than likely resistance. So that's why we only wanted to reload everything we trimmed in here. We think it's reasonable for this to continue being some sort of descending channel all the ways back into 17, where we're going to be more aggressive. But different from roadblocks, where if we look at the daily chart on a firm, you can see we always say that those big players are right around that middle ground. So when we see these wick bottoms, this is why we tried the flat top off of 14. If we go back into that 15, we can show that real quick. I was building this sort of flat top off 14, breaks it and back test it, trim the levels to the upside. We haven't had any reloads in the name. I had some good prints. Here's where we started hitting the reloads. It's showing the support build. Now, boom, hit the reload gap up by the gap. We don't trim it up to 18. Pulls all the ways back in. We run a hard stop underneath the lows. Doesn't trigger us. Now making a push where on this bull flag consolidation, we also add in more, getting some trims on this candle and a push up to 19 that we didn't get over here, respecting the resistance. Pulls back into the gap, we just respect the gap. That's all we did. That's all we did with the name. But dating back to that daily chart, you can see from this positive breakdown here, it's not in jeopardy. We're not in jeopardy of anything. Actually, we think it has a pretty good catalyst to fill this 21-22 gap. We need it to show us a wick of buying pressure off of this gap fill though. If it's a death candle down into 1750, it's not a good look. Where the open price tomorrow, I think, is going to be big. But filling this gap today was a big level. It didn't get there this day. We got there today. If we can get back over top of 19, we think there's a catalyst for 22s. So that's what we're going to be looking for. Roblox, trying to catch a bid off 39s. Just a weak name. Actually, really catching a bid off of that wick low right there. Buyers coming back in. Still has to fight through the lows. We are stopped out of Roblox, unfortunately. Looking at GME, really catching a bid now. Wick the day high. Nice volume, 9 seconds left, 25K. Nice volume increase and a nice candle close we're going to try and get right here. So let's see if we can get some continuation on this name. Here's the open of the next candle. Pushes 4 days high. And there's 2320s. Let's push these 2325s. You know, I'd say it probably has some resistance up to these 30s where I could see some profit taking start coming in. You got some wicks, tries to get there. Now, when we get there, are we going to see it wick down? Do we need to pull back in? Interesting question, but a nice chart setup. Very nice chart setup. XOM, strong move. Actually attempting to maybe break this descending channel today. Tilray still hasn't given us those 28. We're on the ask at 28. AMD catching a nice bid. NASDAQ looking strong. Gaps up to the level. Tilray, 2 pennies off. Let's just go ahead and give us that fill. Nice sideways consolidation. I'd be shocked if this didn't give me a fill at 28. GME, strong, and now I think worthy of starting to take a little bit of profits on this name. Nice match of volume coming in here. We don't see why we can't keep printing this to the high side. There's a little wick of selling coming in. All in all, I think I'd be shocked if that was a wick high. Maybe this is the pull back into 24.15, previous day's high. Seems reasonable. Tilray still doesn't want to give us that print. XELA catching a bid also to those 630s. FFIE still trading inside of that channel. GME. This looks like it's gonna be continuation strong. 9 minutes left in this candle, already at 26K. Right up to 23.35s. Is this a level that we want to start trimming? But a notable move. Tilray continuing to reject up towards that level. XELA acting like it wants to push for a day's high. Nice trend line hold. And there is a day high print right there, 1 penny higher. Only 2 lots on 39s that we got to fight through. Let's see if we can push this. And there's 43s. We're going to go ahead and get ready for a 5% trim here. See if we can see those upper 40s one more time. And let's go ahead and print. Ring the register there on some shares. That is our first print on GME. We got a 23.44 fill. So now that I trim some, let's see it push higher. Just respecting that 34. That's what the goal is right here. So we got the respect of that 34. Nice green candle move. Let's see if we can get some further movement through that and get a true red or green engulfing candle up to 24s is what we're really looking for next. Let's take a look at that BDRX trade. Oh, wicked right into that. We had our eyes on it. Wicked right in the 6. An order off of that would have been printing at the moment, but not out of the woods yet. Let's see if this can pull back in actually to more of that uptrend level. With the NASDAQ getting a nice little pump there, I'm sure AFRM, no, not really, but still holding above that gap, which is what we want for now. We'd say you probably have some sort of descending channel, something like that. That just needs a break. Tilray. Are we going to see some buying pressure come in these 20s? Let's take a look back at Lucid. Lucid reclaiming those 20s, giving you that nice U-shape start of that stair step, continuing to respect. We put an alert had it given a break of these lows, but now not even thinking about that alert right now. It does have a wick top coming in, but giving a nice move. All in all, I think this is going to call it for the live stream. I think we're just going to keep GME on watch for the rest of the day, and hopefully get a nice 23.50 break coming in here soon is what we're hoping for. So that's going to call it for today. I appreciate everyone who tuned in, and we'll see you on the live stream tomorrow morning. Peace.